Firstly, many thanks everybody for joining us here today. My name is Ian Derbyshire and I'm the commercial manager here at Revelwood. So I'm going to drop into the agenda so you know what we're looking to step through today. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues and we'll do some proper introductions just after the agenda. Also want to give you all an overview on who Revelwood are and what we bring in terms of our experience in the world of adaptive planning. We do want to try and keep the session as interactive as possible. You are all on mute, but we do have a couple of polls in today's session where we want to ask you a few questions. And we do have a Q&A box that if you have any questions, any comments, please drop them in the Q&A. And towards the end of the session, we will give a run through of any questions that have come up. We're then going to drop into the main part of the session, and Simon's going to take you through an overview of typically what we see in the world of planning in terms of efficient processes, inefficient processes, and share with you the benefit of the experience that we have here at Revelwood. Next, JP is going to drop into Workday Adaptive Planning, which is the bulk of today's session, and take you through a demonstration. We're going to make sure that we focus on what the features are that you will get with Workday Adaptive Planning, and as important, what's the business benefits that you are going to have with Workday Adaptive Planning. As I said, we'll finish off with a second poll, Q&A. As I said, let's keep this interactive. If you've got any questions, drop them in the box at the bottom. And then we'll wrap things up. And hopefully, we've got our timing right. And we'll finish bang on 2:45 UK time today. So, moving on to formal introductions, starting with Simon.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Simon Foley, Principal Consultant at Revelwood. I've been working with adaptive planning for just over 8.5 years. Prior to that, my career has been mainly focused in finance, starting as a chartered accountant and then moving into different roles across financial control, FP&A, and then more recently into systems implementation and finance transformation roles.
Right.
JP.
Yeah, so JP or Jean-Paul Remmelzwaan from the Netherlands. I'm a pre-sales solution consultant. I have over 13 years experience, both in a role as a solution consultant, but also in implementing the solution. So looking forward to showing you Workday Adaptive Planning today.
Excellent. Thank you, gents. And last but hopefully not least is myself. I have been in the world of adaptive planning for almost 7 years now. Between JP, Simon and myself, we've worked in many industries. We've seen what good looks like. We've also seen what bad looks like. So hopefully between the three of us today, we can bring a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge to today's webinar. So the next section is going to be just a quick overview, because I know you're all keen to drop into the detail. Who are Revelwood? So Revelwood are a Workday Adaptive Planning partner. We're headquartered in the US, but we also have offices in Europe. You've heard JP's based out in Netherlands. Myself and Simon are based in the UK. We're a platinum partner, which means our accreditation and certification means we are a platinum partner, and we're an award-winning. We were the North America Partner of the Year in 2023. We've had lots and lots of experience. Latest count over 400 adaptive planning implementation, and that's across many different industries. We are recognized for delivering on our promise. Our number one aim is to implement a solution, implement adaptive planning that allows you in your organizations to become more efficient and self-sufficient in regards to adaptive planning. On to the next slide, which gives an overview of the many customers that we've been involved with. You see many different logos. The main thing I want to tease out here is that we've been involved in many different industries. There isn't a requirement, there isn't an issue that we haven't been able to fix, solve, make better with the advent of adaptive planning. So moving on to the next section is really the first poll of today. Okay, and JP is going to flash up the poll now. You've got the ability here to select all that apply. So we've got 4 points: data management, model management, collaboration, reporting, analysis. Which of them currently today in your businesses have significant manual processes? JP, are you able to launch the poll?
Yes, I am.
So yes, please tick whichever, and it can be more.
I think it's the other poll. JP, it's the wrong poll.
Oh yes, that's poll 2. Well spotted.
Poll 1.
There we go.
It's
Poll
now
1.
launched.
You were just making sure that we were watching as well as the attendees, JP. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. So poll number 1, which part of your processes have significant manual effort involved? Yeah, you can have multiple choice, and we'll give it 30 seconds ago for all of the attendees to vote there. Yeah. I assume you can see the votes coming in, JP?
Yep, I can. 3 of 7 have answered the question. 4 of 7. So I'm just going to give everyone 10 more seconds. 5 of 7. Yep. 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 1. All right, yep. I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Okay, so fairly typical to what we see. They all have a part to play. Model management, the ability to update and reflect current and future requirements. Typically, many of you will be using Excel, and that's difficult. Yeah, so to see model management up there, to see reporting up there, is typically what we see out in the real world as well. So that's good. We'll move on now to Simon, who's going to drop into what he's seen, what he's experienced out in the world of FP&A. So over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, so I'd like to start this section by asking all of you to think about your own organizations and your own FP&A teams, and how the time of that team is split between low, medium, and high value activities, both currently and how we would like it to be in the future. And while you're doing that, I'm going to show you now the results of a survey by FP&A Trends, who carry out a global survey each year, where they included this as one of their questions. And if you look on the left-hand side, first of all, you'll see that although the trend has marginally improved over the last 5 years, still, if you look at low-value tasks around data collection and data validation, that's still making up nearly 50% of the time of FP&A teams, and only around a third of time is actually spent on high-value activities such as insight generation and actually driving actions and decisions. So if you look on the right-hand side, the second graph, what's showing is that although right now the split is heavily weighted towards low-value activities, of course, as you'd expect, all these organizations really wish to move their focus away from those low-value activities up to medium and high value. And that's really the focus of this webinar today, is to identify what a lot of those low value and manual activities are currently, and how we can suggest a way that you can actually look to eliminate those. So starting with what some of those common inefficiencies are, what you can see here on this slide, starting at the kind of top, like 1 o'clock on the clock. I'm going to move around the clockwise direction, which pretty much follows the kind of process flow of a typical planning process. So starting off, normally the way you start your process, you're looking to import the latest set of actuals into your model. That's likely to come from multiple different systems, different GL systems, different HR systems, CRMs, and other operational systems. But with each of those, inevitably, it's going to include a number of different challenges in terms of cleansing, reformatting, and remapping of all those different data sets. Moving into the models and templates themselves, likely those are going to need updating because to reflect any changes that have happened actually in your business since your last planning cycle. So whether that's new acquisitions, new cost centers, new business units, or perhaps externally, new markets or new products or new customer types, all of those need to be updated, which inevitably means adding in new rows, columns, new work tabs, and all of the associated formulas that need to be expanded together with all the risks that that brings. When you're finally ready to distribute templates out to the business, normally that again has a lot of manual effort involved, using emails, and complicated by probably having different templates which need to be sent to different people based on their different roles in the organization. When you finally start to get the templates back as they're being submitted, those normally need to be added and aggregated one by one into your kind of central model or central data source, at which point it's the first time you can actually start to review the submissions, identify any gaps or anomalies or errors, which therefore need to get sent back and reworked, which kind of starts the cycle again. In most organizations, you'll have interdependencies in your planning. So say the inputs from the sales team need to be fed into the operations team. So to achieve that kind of alignment requires a lot of manual coordination, often by the finance team, to kind of bridge that that gap, which again leads to delays in the process while one team is waiting for another team to complete their inputs before they can begin their planning. As changes are made and as different iterations of a plan forecast are gone through, there's lots of changes which take place. If you attempt to try and track all of those changes to understand the causes for how the overall result is moving, if you have a legacy system or an Excel-based system or a spreadsheet-based system, often that's extremely difficult to do and requires a lot of manual tracking to achieve that. When you're finally ready to start going through more formal review and approval processes, again, often a lot of manual processes required there, a lot of coordination, creation of reports to send to people. If there's rejections or changes required, again, there's a lot of manual processes and feedback required. The complexity of that process, particularly when there's a lot of stakeholders and budget people inputting into that budget process, means that to actually track the status of a process, of a budget process, to understand how close you are to completing it is very complicated and requires a lot of manual spreadsheets to kind of even see what the status is for each of the different submissions. And then finally, to actually help people to understand what the plan means and the outputs that it's generating, the generation of that, the reporting, particularly the ad hoc reporting that's required, often it falls to finance to do that on behalf of the business because of the requirement to kind of centrally manage all of the inputs. And that unfortunately normally creates quite a lot of bottlenecks, and together with the difficulties to actually generate different ad hoc reports for different users. So that's just some of the problems that businesses find. And this second slide here is just highlighting kind of at a pretty high level why we want to kind of get rid of them and what the benefits are going to be for your business. So first of all, by identifying and eliminating those inefficiencies, first of all, means you can refocus your efforts on actually spending more time collaborating with the business and all the different business stakeholders. That in turn should hopefully boost their engagement in the planning process and ultimately, hopefully, their ownership of both the inputs and the outputs of the planning process. At the same time, removing those inefficiencies helps you to reduce the overall cycle time for the planning process. Often we've seen that with adaptive planning customers, they can see between a 50 and 70% reduction in the cycle times, whether that's for a budget or a forecast. And by reducing those cycle times, in turn, you can therefore hope to generate both more timely forecasts and, as a result, also more frequent forecasts and multiple what-if scenarios. And by doing all of those things, ultimately, we get to the point where we can help drive better decision-making and better business agility, which is kind of one of the overall goals of any FP&A team.
Yep.
All right, so that's kind of what we're aiming to aim for. So now I'm going to hand over to JP, who's going to actually take us through how that can be achieved in practice. Exactly.
So I'm here to show you how Workday Adaptive Planning can support with all that, getting more value. And how I do that, I have a demo agenda. I have 3 demo sections. They all have a topic related to what Simon just talked about. So the first one is Teresa, who's gonna set some targets, gonna update some structures and data. Then Angela is gonna take that targets and those new structures and is gonna create a bottom-up forecast. And then finally, Patrick is gonna do some analysis on the data. So after each section, we'll recap and just summarize the key features and the business benefits of those key features. So first, let's start with Teresa. So Teresa starts in a dashboard. This is a dashboard with all her relevant KPIs. And I'm also able to put some text on the dashboard. So these are the things that I'm gonna focus on with Teresa. So I'm gonna update structure, some core structures, update actuals, check the actuals, review the trends, and then finally I'm gonna set some targets in this section. Just to highlight structures, what we mean with that, it's things like A-level structure, centralized, centrally managed, completely customizable. It has a hierarchy, so we can automatically consolidate data and we can give users access to part of the structure. And what we also mean with structures are versions. Versions you can very much compare to a Excel file that you save under a different name. But in Adaptive, we have all those versions centralized, so it's very easy to compare, do variance analysis, and to actually create them. So that's a benefit of having a centralized solution. So let's first update the structure. So I have one hierarchy, but I also want to report in additional hierarchies. So in Adaptive, you are unlimited in as many additional hierarchies you want to use. For example, what I wanna do is on my Sales North department, I also want to add it to an additional organization view, and that is sales. So I'm just first gonna do that, and on all these additional organizations, we can report and enter data. So let me first just take care of that. So how that now looks like, if we look at this OpEx target, if I would drill down into it, and I would drill down into my additional organization, I see this key OpEx KPI breaking down over the additional organizations. And finally, it could also drill down into department. And this is the department that I just added to that total sales. So that's my first step. Now, what I also want to do is I want to update my actuals because I have some trends that I want to take into account for my target setting. And what we see Q3, the actual expenses are much lower than Q2, and that's because I haven't imported September yet. So let me just take care of that. I'm gonna go into my integration and task overview, and from here I can just run an integration that will update my actuals. With this task, it includes things like data transformation. It has the data source connection, whether that's a API or a database or a flat file. Adaptive can handle all of them. So we see the task is already run. Now, if I refresh my dashboard and if I look at the Q3 actuals, I would see my actuals in Q3 increased a little bit. We can see that in the dashboard, but what I can also do, if I want to look into details, I can also open up a report and really look at GL account by GL account, what the data was for actuals. Right. So that's my 3 tasks completed. If I review these trends, I have some help from ML or AI, and ML means a machine learning forecast. So what we actually see in this red line, this is a machine learning forecast generated with the use of historical data and an algorithm applied to it. So I can use that as a base for my targets. Also, I can use my actuals as a base for my targets. And then on one screen, I can change the targets. So all of my OpEx targets, they are according to intelligent plan, but you might have some information that is not in your intelligent plan, like you are expecting a growth in sales, so therefore you need more headcount. So let's just put that in the plan. So I'm gonna say my payroll's gonna increase by 5%, and my taxes is also increased by 5%. And now I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And now all my changes are reflected on a real-time basis immediately. So before I end this demo section, I'm gonna do one final thing. I'm gonna go to the process, and I'm gonna mark this task as complete. So all of the other users know that the targets are updated. So I'm just gonna end with that, and going back to our slide, just to recap what I've just done. So I have updated my structure, imported my actuals, and I've set targets. So those are the key features. And of course, I had help from my AI and a machine learning forecast. And now Simon is gonna highlight the business benefits of that.
Yeah, thanks, JP. Yeah, so I guess starting with the data transformation and loading all the automation of that, I guess 2 things. One is that it's eliminating a lot of manual low-value tasks, allowing you to focus obviously on more high-value activities. And secondly, it's giving you data which is not just more timely, but also granular, accurate, and consistent to populate your planning model. In terms of the model updates that you showed, not only does that allow you to very quickly kind of update the model to reflect the current business requirement, but also it means you can think about future scenarios. So if you want to do a scenario where, what about if we acquire this new business or open a new business unit or add a new product, you can very quickly add those things in with a very low risk, because the models are designed to flex automatically and expand the logic across those new models. And then finally, because of the way that the system works in that way, in a controlled way, you're able to increase the frequency of those refreshes. So not only would you refresh the data and the modeling structure at the start of the planning process, but you even have the option that through a planning process, which if a planning process extends over a month or more, you could actually have key points within that process where you actually feel confident enough to actually refresh the model and the data throughout that process, so that it kind of still shows you the latest view for the business.
Exactly, because it takes less time.
Exactly, and it's less risky to do it.
Exactly, yeah. Thanks, Simon. So second part is really on collaborative planning. So how are we going to work with those drivers and use them in our bottom-up forecast? So let's move over to Angela. In a different screen. I'm just logging in as Angela. Angela has her own user rights. She has her own landing page, and her landing page is a process guide that will help her guide through the tasks that are right here. So there's one task running late. She needs to adjust her workforce plan. After that, she's gonna perform some other tasks. And what we also see is that Teresa, she completed her task of the updating the drivers. If I open up this process guide, it will open up a step-by-step guide, like I said. And the first one is adjusting the workforce plan. I'm going to use another dashboard for that, where I see my my target, my budget, basically, that I have for OpEx for the Sales North level. And by the way, Angela only has access to the Sales North level. And she also has a workforce planning sheet, which is an example and is fully customizable to your needs. But in this example, I have some personnel related information like a name, a start date, a salary, and so on. And I know that we're going to grow. So therefore, I'm going to hire a new FTE. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy one of my new hires. I'm just going to change the name. And then there's one more thing that I'm doing because we're expecting growth in August. So therefore, I'm hiring a person in August, and that's it for the adjustments. And what we will see straight away is that we are now almost on target with our expenses. So that's one job done. Now I'm going to look at my line item expenses. So this is a different view. This is more like a table view, a report of all our GL accounts related to OpEx. So what I see is very familiar to Excel, but the main difference is that all of these structures that we are using are managed centrally. So all my GL accounts, they are a centralized structure, and my versions as well, and my levels in here as well. So what I want to highlight, some anomalies in my sheet here. And anomalies basically means a difference between the machine learning forecast that is unexpected and it's outside of a bandwidth. So what we will see, there are quite some anomalies. So maybe let's just focus on this side. In August, we see an anomaly because we just hired that new FTE. So it makes sense that the costs are increasing in there, and these are directly linked to our workforce planning model. So if I would drill down into the calculated salary, you'll see that new hire in here with the salary that is automatically updated. Another anomaly that we see is here, telephone costs. Of course, we are expecting telephone costs to go up because they're linked to FTE, but not with such a big amount. So that's maybe worth investigating a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a note in here and saying increased because of new FTE, but what's the 18K, right? And what I can also do, I can drill down into this and maybe look at who made this entry. And I can do that by using the audit trail function, and that will give me a view on who made the last edit and when. And we can see that Teresa did that, right? So that's relevant information. Okay, so my review is now done. Just going to save it. So my note is also saved in the database, so I can use that later on in my reporting. And I'm going to set this to complete. And then I'm going to go to my next task, which is a target versus plan comparison. So in one view, I can see here, if I just quickly change my version in here, the variances between the targeted OpEx and the planned OpEx. And what we see is some differences in August and onwards, and that makes sense because we just hired that new FTE. So what I'm also going to do, I'm going to add some note here. This is because of new hire. Good. So that's all what I'm going to do. Finally, I'm going to submit this plan so everyone knows that I'm done with my plan, and now other people can start analyzing this. So from a centralized environment, I can submit it, and now the data is locked for editing. So that's kind of useful if you want to do your reporting. So you're sure and certain that there are no changes in between. Right. So going back, and let's do some recap here. So I've just made some changes in my bottom-up forecast. I've used the top-down targets to see if I was on target, and I performed a series of tasks that guided me through the process. So key features here: Angela only has access to Sales North. We have real-time updates, the workforce planning link to the GL. I've used my anomaly detection and used my machine learning forecast. And also I was able to put in some commentaries that might be useful for other stakeholders. I've used Audit Trail to see what person budgeted at 18K for telephone expenses. And then finally I submitted my plan.
Okay, great. Thanks, JP. So in terms of some of those benefits, so first of all, I guess by allowing the budget holders to interact directly with the model, but in a controlled way, it actually makes sure that there's clear ownership by the right stakeholder for the correct inputs and outputs of the planning model. Secondly, because of the real-time updates in the model, it allows for much easier sharing of information and inputs between stakeholders. So you can it's much easier to ensure that different stakeholders remain aligned in terms of their different planning inputs. With the different input validations and things like the machine learning to identify anomalies, you get a much better quality and completeness of the planning inputs, which in turn reduces the requirements for manual validations and reworks. Looking at things like the process tracker and the workflow really makes it much easier to see the progress of the plan for different stakeholders across the organization when that's being centrally monitored. And all of those points really all contribute to reducing the cycle time of the overall planning process. So it means that you can, the plans are produced on a more timely basis, and you can start to drive towards more frequent planning.
Exactly. So again, we want to spend less time on manual tasks.
Yeah.
So the final part, Patrick is going to analyze the numbers, although the process is still running. But Angela just submitted her plan, so you can already look at the data. So let's go to Patrick again in another screen, and I'm gonna log in. And Patrick, his start page is also this process tracker. What we see here, the workforce plan, at least one person, he completed that task, and it also goes for the other tasks in here. So now Patrick knows that one person has indeed completed the task. So he sees this on this section. And now you can go ahead and open up a report where there is a comparison between the current budget, the previous budget, on the GL account level. So at one glance, so this is on the total company level, because Patrick has access to that total level, he can see if there are relevant variances. So all of these lines, they are small variances, but on telephone expenses, quite a large variance. So he might want to go and do some further investigation. So in the report that is built and that is used for by Patrick, he can drill down into levels, and that will give him an additional view on the data. So all the levels are on the left-hand side, and now we have just selected the telephone account. And what we see here is that the variance is on the Sales North level. And what we also see, if we open up this cell node, we see that it's increased because of new FTE. But what's the 28K? So you can look at that node. So this is all during the process. These reports are really good for that, to do analysis, doing drill down, and so on. But what if you want to distribute your reports to stakeholders? And we all know most of the stakeholders are very familiar with Excel. So they like their reporting in Excel, and for a good reason, because Excel has really good formatting options. And it's really flexible. So Adaptive has an add-in in their Office products, so in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and it has a direct link with the Adaptive data and data elements. And a good way to show that is to click on this linked cells button. And what we see there is that all the green and the blue cells, they are basically parameters that are centralized in Adaptive, but we use them in Excel. So things like versions, structures, calendars, GL accounts, data, we use them, and we can refresh them as we see fit. So if there are changes in the budget or in actuals, we want to see them reflected, preferably very fast. So we can do that within Adaptive, and I'm just going to show you how. So we have a couple of GL accounts where we don't see data yet. So I can take care of that by going into my GL accounts in the left-hand section, selecting taxes and benefits all the way to other expenses, and just drag and drop them in my Excel book. And now the only thing that I have to do is I have to refresh my data, and that will show and update all the data. So that's really fast. What I can now also do, these office expenses, remember that telephone account was in there, so I might want to expand this a little bit, also because I see that there's a big variance between the two. And now if I look at this telephone account again, I see that 18.5K again. And just to prove you that this is really live, I can use my Explore Cell function to drill down into the data. And this will lead me back into Adaptive, and will allow me again to use that audit trail to see that Teresa actually made that change. Right. Final piece. This is around scenario planning. So this is like a little dessert. So most of this was bottom up, but what if you wanna create a what if scenario? What if my revenue is growing? What does that mean for my key KPIs? For that, Adaptive has a thing called personal scenarios. Every user can create their own scenarios, and they're only visible to them. And then if you're fine with the scenario, you can later on share them with the organization and really use them as a budget or forecast. And I'm just gonna give this a name, Patrick's what if. Right? I want to switch, and I just want to change this revenue driver. And again, this is fully customizable. So these are just the drivers that I am using, but you can create whatever drivers are relevant for your what if scenarios. So just making some changes real quick, and what you will see is you'll see the changes reflecting in all of these visuals. So I see variances between my budget and my what if scenarios. I can see it on a year-on-year comparison, and also in this nice waterfall where we see how we're getting from the budget to the what if scenarios and what were the changes in between. Right, going back for the recap. So what I just did, we did some analysis during the process with standard reporting, ad hoc reporting, and Office Connect, and also the dessert, creating a personal scenario, what if scenario, real quick. Whoops.
Great. So for last time, so first of all, I guess the use of, or the ability to use active dashboards and the other reporting tools means that the planners and the budget holders are able to really have at their fingertips all the key insights and trends they need to do accurate planning. And because of the real-time update that we've talked about a couple of times, they can see instantly what the impact is of the changes they make to kind of validate and ensure that those are the correct inputs or that the correct changes that they want to make. Together with the ability to drill down and slice and dice, as JP showed, means you can really get into detail to understand what are the underlying drivers for any changes in the plan into the future. And with the flexibility of the reporting and the ability for individual users to build out their own reports, you really are able to generate and deliver the end users really customized analysis so that different stakeholders, if they have different requirements, they can have their own views of the plan data. And then ultimately with the scenario planning that JP showed at the end, it really helps to drive that kind of business agility by being able to kind of look at lots of different what if scenarios, so that as and when different opportunities and threats actually do appear, the business is in a much better place to be able to react to them because they've already planned out what the impacts could be of those things.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I think
Thanks.
with that, we're ready for a second poll.
Yep,
Things up.
we are. So I'm gonna select the correct one.
Yeah, you've all had a sneak preview of this one. And again, you can select all that apply. So we'll give, we look to be running on time in a moment, so we'll give it a few more seconds. And then JP can flash up the results in 5, 4,
In 3,
2,
2,
1. And let's see
1.
what people found
Yes.
interesting today. Excellent. Yeah. Increased speed and frequency. Everybody's ticked that one, which is really good. And everybody's improved decision making. And that's quite interesting. If you think back to Simon's slide earlier on, which is like a funnel, right at the end was about getting to that point, doing things quicker that are adding low value allows you to make improved decision making. So that's good, good stats there. Yeah. Cool. So we are on to questions and answers. And looking at where we are with time, we should be able to answer a couple. If you just want to, do I need to press close on that? Let me just check. Okay, so there are a few questions come through. Starting from one for Simon. So Simon, we talked about the reports there, and JP mentioned that users can create their own reports. This is about the FP&A teams owning reports, don't need IT. But how do you stop people seeing data that they shouldn't see? Salary, for example, we hear that a lot. So how do you manage that, Simon?
Yeah, so there is a very powerful security model within the system. So it allows you to define for each individual user what functions they're able to perform in the system and also what data they're able to see and interact with. So whether that's making sure that they can only see data for their own cost center or only see data for revenue or expenses, whatever it is, then that can be set up. So mainly driven by their role and their place in the organization. So absolutely. So if you want them to see summary level data, but you don't want them to be able to drill down into personnel salaries, then that can absolutely be configured.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just conscious looking at time. There are a couple more questions, but we'll follow up with people direct. So just wrapping up the last couple of slides. In terms of any more information, you can visit our website. We've got a really good knowledge center that has a lot of information that will support a lot of the stuff we've seen. And then specifically in terms of wrapping things up and moving on to the next slide, please, JP. It's really hard to give you a really good insight in adaptive planning in what's been a 45-minute webinar, 25-30-minute demo. There's a lot more to see, yeah? Would you like a test drive of Workday Adaptive Planning? That's something that we offer, Workday offer, that allows you to get hands-on with Workday Adaptive Planning, yeah? Analogy we use is you wouldn't buy a car without test driving it. If you want a tailored demo, you want to take a few of your use cases, JP can build a demonstration that level structure looks like your data. It has your structure in, yeah? And any further questions, reach out to any of us. Simon's details, JP, and mine are there. And last, but certainly not least, thank you all for your time this afternoon. More than aware that for many of you, it's budget season and you're probably knee deep in Excels at the moment. So thank you, everybody. And we will follow up, and we will also share a recording with all of you. So on behalf of myself, JP, and Simon, thank you, everybody, for your time today. Cheers now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.